Scrutiny Committee. I am Councillor Nigel Pepper, Chairman of the committee. Councillor Adam Stokes, Vice Chairman, is also present. Can I remind you that the audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website, and with this in mind, I would like to welcome members of the public watching this live. Before we start the meeting proper, I believe this to be the first Scrutiny Committee meeting since the death of Queen Elizabeth II. And with that in mind, could I ask you to join me in 2 minutes silence, please? Okay, thank you. I'd like to begin with a health and safety announcement, please. There is no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we'll need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park and wait there. Also, can I remind everyone to ensure their mobiles, laptops and iPads are on silent for the duration of this meeting. Also, may I remind you that the hearing loop is now activated. Request to speak will be collated by my Vice Chairman. When invited to speak, you should press the button on your microphone unit to make it live. Then press again when you finish your contribution. Excuse me. We'll now move on to the formal agenda. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence, replacement councillors. Over to you, Trina.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Mrs Clark, Councillor Mr Clark, Councillor William Gray, Councillor Key and Councillor King. But can I just say for Councillor Mrs Clark, we have Councillor Noisia here as her replacement member, and that Councillor King, apologies are in, but she will be attending the meeting remotely.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, declarations of councillors' interests. Do any members wish to declare any interest which have not already declared? Okay, thank you. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting of the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee held on that hot day of 19th of July. I'll just go through pages 7 to 19 of the agenda for accuracy. So page 7, page 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and finally page 19. So this item is to approve and sign the minutes of the last meeting. Do I have a proposer, please, for those minutes? So I've got the Vice Chairman proposing. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Dunny. Thank you, Councillor Dunny. We'll now vote. You're voting on whether you agree that the minutes are a correct record. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? And finally, any abstentions? Okay, thank you, Councillor Brockway and Councillor Sear. Thank you. Okay. Item 4. I'll just say that those minutes are agreed as a correct and accurate record. Item 4, announcements by the chairman, executive councillors and lead officers. Chairman, as chairman, I'd just like to say also this is the first scrutiny committee meeting since the death of Councillor Angela Newton. And I'd just like you to join me for a minute silence for Councillor Newton, please. Okay, thank you. We have a potentially heavy agenda today with one pre-decision scrutiny item, which is also an exempt item, and therefore will be taken towards the end of this meeting. I'd like to remind officers that all reports presented today should be taken as read. Therefore, may I request presenters to only summarise key points of their report submitted. And also, may I remind members the importance of succinct questions and contributions that will allow for efficient and effective use of the time allocated for each discussion. I'd also like to remind members of this committee of our forthcoming visit to the County Emergency Planning Centre on the 30th of September. If you require further information around this, please contact the scrutiny officer following this meeting. Just one more thing from me. I understand it's Sarah Barry's last meeting today. I don't think she's in the chamber right now. Is she? Okay, well, it's Sarah's last meeting today. She's retiring this Friday, and I'd just like to say on the record, thank you to Sarah for all your help and assistance over the years. Could that be noted, please? Thank you. Oh, sorry, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just to let council members know what's happening next in terms of Sarah's role as head of service of Safer Communities. We're currently in the process of reorganising the service, which is going through its consultation phase in removing that role as a single head of service that would oversee trading standards and community safety in its totality, and looking to bridge that with two heads of service, one within trading standards and one within community safety, removing that wider head of service role. It's still in its consultation stage with the various members in part, but that's what we're working towards in the future.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Are there any executive council announcements, please? No. Okay, thank you. Are there any senior officer announcements at this stage, apart from Martin just be announced? Okay, we've got Nicole Hilton indicated on Teams. So over to you, Nicole.
Thank you very much. For some reason, it's not allowing me to take my camera off. Oh, it is now, so I hope you can hear me. It was just further to the 2-minute silence in respect of Her Majesty the Queen. Just to say that we had an event at the castle yesterday with a large screen where we had over 1,000 residents attend. It was incredibly moving, incredibly respectful, and reflected the historic event that occurred.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Okay, so we now move on to the meeting proper. Agenda item 5 is Lincolnshire Coroner's Service Update Report. This item can be found on pages 21 to 28 of the agenda pack and is an annual report in accordance with the requirement of Her Majesty's Chief Coroner for England and Wales. Our actions is that we're invited to firstly review and comment on the contents of this report, the progress and performance of the service, and also consider timescale for further reports. The report will be presented by Paul Smith, Senior Coroner for Lincolnshire. So without further ado, over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In accordance with your previous invitation, I will endeavour to keep my submissions brief this morning and focus on the developing trends identified within the report. If I can start, Mr. Chairman, with the raw data, you will see that throughout 2021, the number of referrals received by the Coroner Service was down approximately 10% to a figure of 2,953. That reflected 38% of deaths reported locally, a little above the national average of 33, but a figure which is constant year on year within this jurisdiction. Of the referrals received, some 47% required a post-mortem examination, an increase on previous years, and again a figure slightly above the national average of 43%. Of the referrals received, 17% went to inquest, again a significant increase in past years, but interestingly exactly on par with the national average. In short, the area has opened and concluded significantly more inquests throughout 2021 than ever before, and I'm pleased to report that throughout last year there was a significant improvement in the timeliness of the service in taking matters to inquest. The service reflected an improvement of some 7 weeks to an average of 36 weeks against the nationally declining picture, the national average being 31. In relation to themes and trends, the first thing I think I have to say is that the pandemic continues to have a significant impact on the service, not in terms of raw numbers delivered, those figures, as I have indicated, being reduced year on year, but rather more subtly, there is a significant increase in the number of open inquests. Those reflect longer and more complicated inquests, perhaps those requiring a jury, and it is unlikely, I fear, that the gains on timeliness identified last year will be sustained throughout the current year. The caseload of the service is increasing, both in terms of numbers of postmortems and also cases going to inquest. Very briefly, I can tell the committee that immediately following the COVID, or the first wave, should I say, of the COVID pandemic at the end of September 2020, the service had approximately 390 open inquests. Those had been cleared by and large by the end of the calendar year. We were down to a figure of some 300. By December of 2021, that figure had climbed inexorably to 380. And by the middle of this year, we peaked at around 420 cases, an increase of 40%, 120 cases over our baseline pre-COVID figure. As I sit here this morning, I can tell you that the current figure is somewhere between 390 and 400 cases. So we are some way below our high water mark, but equally higher than we have been for some time. The reasons for that increase are many and varied. Clearly, there were a greater number of post-mortem examinations required. There were fewer face-to-face GP consultations enforced clearly as a consequence of the pandemic. That in turn meant that medical practitioners were unable to offer causes of death, generating an increased number of post-mortems. In terms of hospital deaths, the medical examiner system has proceeded through the United Lincolnshire Hospitals Trust. All of hospital deaths are now independently scrutinised through the medical examiner system. As reflected within the various pilot schemes prior to its introduction, has generated an increased number of matters requiring a post-mortem and indeed requiring an inquest. An independent medical scrutiny has identified matters which are potentially unnatural, converting an otherwise natural death to one which requires a coronial investigation. I've made the point within the report, Mr. Chairman, that the increase in figures is not immediately apparent from the MOJ data, which appears at paragraph 1.5, and the devil lies in the detail, if I might say so in relation to that, because the MOJ data is discrete year on year, and referrals received in a previous year, even if they ultimately move to inquest, if they have not done so by the time the data for that year is collected, they have, in essence, fall out of focus. So I've given some detail in the report. I don't propose to repeat it this morning, but as I say, that to a large degree explains the significant increase in cases that my service has faced. One of the themes that I touch on is the absence of a second full-time coroner that we have in this area. I'm now entering my third year as acting senior coroner without the support of a full-time area coroner to assist me. Within the last 12 months, the service has appointed 3 new assistant coroners. That is a net gain of 2, given that we have had 1 retirement. But the pressures on my time, excuse me, and the pressures on the service have been aggravated to some degree by the concurrent role that I now have in North Lincolnshire, a position which was to which I was appointed in September of last year. Mr. Chairman, you may be aware that the acting senior coroner in North Lincolnshire retired in September of 2021. There was an approach made by North East Lincolnshire Council to see if the coroner service locally was able to assist. It was absolutely the correct decision in my submission that Lincolnshire step into the breach and to assist our neighbours as far as we could. But equally, the fact that the short-term appointment continues to be extended. I've now been extended for a second year in the north of the county. That, I'm afraid, is in danger of impacting on the quality of the service in both areas. The fourth matter I raise is the issue of the merger. I fear I sound a little like a broken record, Mr. Chairman, because every time I come here, I tell you that the decision remains with the Lord Chancellor's Department. That remains the position as of today. Sadly, I see no real appetite there for them to make a decision promptly. Looking forward, Mr. Chairman, you will see that the Coroner's Transformation project undertaken and completed last year was successful. That generated an e-referral system. It generated improved communications with various other stakeholders. It identified and improved consistent working practices across the county, and it identified the Mile Cross Centre as the best option for the service long term. And although progress on the construction work necessary to achieve that aim appears to have stalled, I'm hopeful that some progress will be made within the near future. Last year saw the 2 new appointments, James Chappell as Head of Service and David Stocking as Coroner Services Manager. I'm delighted to welcome both of them. All 3 of us work well as a team, and I look forward to the future benefits of that working relationship. In terms of the merger to which I return, I would respectfully suggest that that's perhaps been the elephant in the room for too long as far as the service has been concerned. There is no timescale, as I understand matters, to a final decision, and the delay in the Lord Chancellor's Department making a decision has proved an express bar to recruiting a second full-time coroner within this area since 2020, the departure of Mr. Brennan. The longer that continues, the greater the risk that the absence of a second coroner will impact on the quality of service in this area. And again, the division of my time between Lincolnshire and North Lincolnshire only exacerbates that. Mr. Chairman, I've never run away from hard work in my life, and I'm not going to start now, but it would be nice to have some light at the end of that particular tunnel. The only other matter I wish to raise this morning, Mr. Chairman, is looking to the future. I've identified that the pressures which have arisen as a consequence of the medical examiner scheme in relation to hospital deaths. If I tell you that that scheme is to be extended to deaths in the community with effect from April next year, you will understand, I'm sure, my trepidation as to how my figures may look when that system takes hold. If hospital deaths being subject to scrutiny has generated a significant volume, I hate to think what the impact of community deaths being subject to a similar scrutiny will have. They are matters to be addressed. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to deal with any matters raised. Subject to that, that is my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Have we any speakers? Okay. Oh, Councillor Brockway, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much for that report. It's very interesting. Chairman, I've got considerable concerns over this business of the appointment being temporary. Senior coroner is such an important post. And my understanding of employment law is if it goes on for 4 years, it becomes permanent automatically anyway, unless the employer can find a good reason for not doing so. And I'm not sure there is a good reason because we have to have a coroner. And I wonder if we could look more at this business of, the decision hasn't been made with North Lincolnshire. Well, why hasn't it been made? How long is it going to go on? And can we actually look into this? It is very difficult for anybody to get their feet properly under the table in a job when the word temporary is attached to their post. And when it's something as senior as this, I think the impact on the community is too great for us to come back yet another time and say that a decision has been made. I wonder if we perhaps through this committee could look at exerting some pressure for some sort of decision or reason, or to make the post permanent. Is there any way of the two councils making the post permanent, even if other agreements are not made? I think your position is very difficult, actually. I sympathise with you. So I think perhaps we need to be supporting our senior coroner here, Chairman. Thank you.
That decision is clearly out of our remit, but certainly we could make advances, I would have thought. Clearly, Paul, there's frustration there that a firm decision's not been taken. And as you said, there's no timescale either, but is there any indications at all of when a decision may be made?
Mr. Chairman, I fear not. I've spoken to James Chappell this morning. We haven't spoken for a couple of weeks. I've been on leave. I understand that in my absence, he contacted the Lord Chancellor's Department, and matters remain as before. We had a welfare visit from the Chief Coroner back in June, and I hoped, as I've said in my report, I hope that might crystallise matters, because he could see the difficulties and the pressures that we were under. I took him round Lincoln. I took him round Cleethorpes in the afternoon, and I was hopeful that that may be something which broke the impasse, whatever the impasse may be. Sadly, nothing has changed since then, and we are simply told that the competing bids are being considered by the Lord Chancellor's Department. My understanding is before the Lord Chancellor's Department can make a decision, there has to be public consultation of some 28 days and a period of consideration of the responses thereafter. It's a particular source of frustration that all the material, I believe that all the material necessary to trigger a public consultation has been with the Lord Chancellor's Department for many months now, and yet nothing has happened. But as you rightly say, it's not a matter for this committee, although I welcome the support from Council.
Councillor, we're sorry to put you on the spot, but I just wondered from your direction, could you provide some help and assistance there, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I am as frustrated as everybody else. And of course, as has already been mentioned, the decision is out of our hands. We've done absolutely everything that's been asked of us, and yet we're still no further forward than when I was first given this portfolio back in May 21. It's extremely frustrating that a decision is somewhere in London and yet we can't prompt them at all. And I don't think it's fair on our coroner. Mr. Smith has been very good in trying to hold everything together for us, and he's not receiving the support that he should have from the chief coroner. We're literally just at the point of virtually camping on the doorstep to prompt them to make a decision. No one understands what the problem is at all. If there is indeed a problem, because we've certainly not been advised of one, and we just want to get on with both North and North East Lincolnshire and have a system in place that works for everybody, because of course at the back of all of this are the bereaved families, and I think that they're the ones that are probably suffering more than we are.
So as an authority, we're doing all that we possibly can.
And more, Chairman. Yes, I promise you, we're on it, not quite weekly, but it's getting to the point where we are chasing them up on a very, very regular basis.
Okay, thank you. Just turning to the nuts and bolts report, Paul, and to give the committee a better understanding, the 8.2 full-time equivalent officers, are these the same officers that assist on the ground? For instance, are these the ones that attend the RTCs and the suicides, etc.? And if they are they strategically placed around the county?
Mr. Chairman, the officers are placed around the county. Without going into too much detail, operationally the team is split so that we have a number of officers dealing with matters which are not obviously inquest bound, cases which are likely to be natural deaths, but within which enquiries need to be made. They are based both in Lincoln and in Boston. In relation to cases which do go to inquest, I have a dedicated inquest team which is based at Mile Cross, and they will be the team who go out across the county if required.
Okay, thank you. That gives us a better understanding of that, I feel, yeah. Anyone else wishing to speak? No. I think the only thing we just need to sort out then is the timescale for a further report. When you're considering coming back to us then, Paul?
Mr. Chairman, the annual report is normally, for the Chief Coroner, is normally published in May. I asked him about it in June when he came to visit, and he told me it was done and it was just waiting for the ink to dry. It's still not been published. I don't know when this year's report is going to come out. I would suggest I return in 12 months' time. Certainly, the report today has been focused on 2021. I won't get the 2022 figures much before the end of May next year,
sure.
Assuming the report comes out to time and I have something against which to compare the performance of the service.
Okay, thank you. Does that fit with your work programme, Chiara? Come back in a year's time. Okay, thank you. Okay, I can't see any further members wishing to speak. So thank you for your questions and comments. For me, this now concludes the discussion of this item. Thank you, Paul, for your full presentation there. We do have sympathy with you. I'm going to move that we endorse the report presented and record our satisfaction in relation to the progress and performance recorded. I also ask that our comments and suggestions in relation to timescales for future reports as captured are reflected in the work programme for this committee going forward. Can members please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you. That is agreed. We'll now move on to the next agenda item 6, which is the service level performance reporting against the performance framework 2021 to 2022, quarter 4. This item can be found on pages 29 to 70 of the agenda pack and reports on Tier 2 service level performance measures for 2022-2023, quarter 1, that are within the remit of this scrutiny committee. The actions for this committee are that we're invited to review and comment on the performance information contained in the report and highlight any recommendations or further actions for consideration. The report will be considered by Martin Parker, Assistant Director for Public Protection, Will Mason, Head of Culture, or I've got here Nicole Hilton if she's back, Lee Surdyfield, Assistant Director Corporate, Mark Baxter, Chief Fire Officer, or Ryan Stacey, Assistant Chief Fire Officer, Nick Matthews, Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership Education Supervisor. To facilitate the discussion, we will take questions following all presentations. So you're first on the list, Martin, so over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So starting with the Eden Links Outreach Domestic Abuse Service, I'm pleased to report that we have managed to catch up some of the performance reporting data that we didn't have at the last scrutiny in June. Unfortunately, we've not quite got Q1 data this year, but we have managed to fill all the data on the previous 2021-2022 data through all 4 quarters. You will see a increasing trend of additional outreach support that has occurred through to 4,432 people being supported, which actually shows and supports the report in terms of our increase in finances for an outreach service when the current contract comes to end in 2023, that this scrutiny committee in June wholeheartedly supported. And you can see now why that became such an important decision when we've seen the increase in numbers of victims who are seeking support. Just some detail within those figures. So 1,698 children have been indirectly supported. So what that means is that where there is a non-abusive parent or member of the family who is having support, the child is also being supported as well. That is a 21% increase within the change between Q3 data and Q4 data around children. Also, there are specifically 687 children and young people open to the service within the Q4 data. So again, this is also an increase of 41% on the number of children that were open to the service in Q3. And I think this shows the change of emphasis that the DA bill brought with the fact that victims, the children under the DA Act became victims in their own right. And that focus on support of them becomes wholly important to change that cycle of behaviours. In addition to the 4,432 people that have been supported through the outreach and IDVA services, I can say that a further 4,712 victims were also provided general advice through the service in support of domestic abuse. Moving on to the multi-agency risk conferences that take place, which detail and deal with high-risk victims. What I'm pleased to say is that there has been a drop of victims attending MARAC between Q1 last year and Q1 this year. So that would show that there has been some interventions that have taken place that is seeing that the highest risk numbers within the county is dropping, and we'll continue to monitor that. Moving on to trading standards and some of the data around illicit tobacco and alcohol. You have got a presentation coming on later from Emma in relation to the service year-end report, but there's a couple of things that I just want to highlight within the numbers that sit there. So you will see for the Q1 this year, 5,778 products were seized in terms of illicit alcohol and tobacco. What I can say that was all tobacco related. There were no illicit seizures of alcohol, which related to 5,544 packs of 20 cigarettes and 234 pouches of tobacco. What's really, really clear is all that activity took place within independent shops throughout the county, as opposed to being at car boot sales or domestic premises. There were 19 visits in total over 17 different premises throughout the county, which included Gainsborough, Boston, Spalding, Lincoln and Grantham. As a result of those 17 premises visits, all premises have now formed part of an informal investigation into those premises. 5 actions have been taken against landlords for allowing criminal activity on their premises has been commenced, thereby giving them warnings and notification that their premises are being used for illicit activities. 3 premises have been subject to closure orders, So that's an official civil order that goes to court, and we request, based on that illicit behaviour causing antisocial behaviour within the communities, that those premises are closed and they're granted up to 3 months. And that's all of those premises. All 3 of those were in the Boston area. 2 investigations as a result of those 17 visits have resulted in proceeds of crime investigations. So this is where illegal monies have been earned from the illicit sale of tobacco. We have commenced investigations to try and claw back some of that financial criminality. We've also, during those 17 premise inspections, 5 individuals have been found working amongst those premises that have been referred to the Home Office Immigration to investigate their legal status. So we are uncovering during those visits people who may be here illegally or may be subject to slavery under the new slavery bill. So it just shows those the importance of our proactive visits that are all intelligence led through the county. Moving on to our unsafe goods. So 945 goods were recovered in Q1. That's split down into 2 main categories. 627 were vapes and 318 were sunglasses. The vapes were from 2 independent shops, and the sunglasses was from a market stall. The premises that were visited were in the East Lindsey area and Grantham and Stamford. I think what's important just to note really for scrutiny is that vapes are a huge issue within Lincolnshire, both Lincolnshire and nationally, currently in terms of the underage sales and the non-compliant products. Age-restricted sales intelligence has increased in the last year by 260%. So we've gone from 15 reports to 54 reports of the use of vapes that are an issue. The Trade and Standards Department are working as a preventative measure, ensuring that we are providing guidance and advice for stores that are selling these vapes to ensure that they are compliant, and that work continues. And I've no doubt that Emma in her report will touch on it in a little bit more detail. In terms of our high-risk premises that are inspected, just want to kind of remind members what that means. So 41 premises were inspected over 5 category areas. One area being safety, which is around safe furniture, electrical items, those types of inspections. One's around animal health, food, feed, and weights and measures. Out of the 41 that were inspected, 26 of the inspections were all okay with no issues. 1 inspection found a major non-compliance in terms of safety, and 14 that were inspected, issues were identified and advice was provided. In terms of the major non-compliance, we are working with that organisation to make sure that that comes up to the necessary requirements in terms of safety. That concludes my report in terms of domestic abuse and trading standards, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Over to you, Will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Overall, it's been an excellent first quarter for performance across the Culture Service. We've achieved all but one of the actual individual targets, and where we haven't, which is the visits to core libraries and mobile library services, this continues to reflect a new pattern, which is across the whole of the nation in how people are using our library services post-COVID, in that they visit less often but take out more books and other items when they do visit. So we are continuing to see less visits, and the sense is that this will probably now become a long-term pattern. But as I say, what we're seeing is they are taking out more items when they are here. Visits to the library website are above target as well. It continues to be a very, very popular and a very widely used service. So that has done particularly well since we had the upgrades to it now actually 2 years ago. Community use of the libraries did, of course, take a hit during COVID, and when we originally reopened our libraries post-COVID, the full community use didn't initially pick up. This started to pick up significantly at the beginning of this calendar year, and we're very pleased to see that for Q1 and so far for the rest of the year, we are significantly above target as well. So we're very pleased to see that that incredibly important use of our core libraries and indeed our community library hubs is still very much a demanded and needed and important part of the services that we provide for our communities. Over on heritage, again, it's been very, very positive to see post-COVID. The demand is still there, and we've had a very, very successful first quarter. There's a lot of activity going on across our heritage sites. In Q1, with our second most successful exhibition been taking place at the collection, and some amazing events, including, of course, the late Queen's Jubilee over the castle as well. So Q1 significantly above target, and so far in Q2, again, we're seeing some very, very positive numbers. And then finally, the final one, where we did actually increase the enjoyment performance target, having exceeded it significantly last year. But I'm very pleased to say that 98.8% of people that visit our sites are still reporting that they find their experience to be good or very good. And this is also still reflected, as we've talked about before, in Scrutiny, where we're picking up similar kind of measures through TripAdvisor, etc. That's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Will. Lee.
Okay, thank you. So the VCS and LCVS have exceeded their target for Q1 in terms of the number of groups that they have supported. This continues to be focused on practical advice and resources, DBS checks, and online training. They have supported organisations across the county and are seeing an increase in demand coming through to them. In terms of volunteers supported, you'll note that 256 volunteers were supported against a target of 350. So the VCS and LCVS missed the target that was given to them. We've analysed with VCS the reasons for that, and they are many and varied. VCS is still reporting volunteer fatigue as a result of the volunteering efforts that were undertaken during the pandemic. And clearly, as many of those large-scale volunteering opportunities have stopped, some of the opportunities have reduced. We also see that volunteers are lacking confidence in terms of moving into the volunteering space. And as part of the organisation support work that they do, VCS are working with organisations to ensure appropriate measures are in place to support volunteers progressing into them and to boost confidence. What we've also seen is a rise in employment over the last quarter, which has a direct impact on the number of volunteers that come forward. Many people that are in the younger age brackets are moving into employment rather than volunteering, which has reduced the support or the capacity available. What we have seen now is an ongoing need for trustees. VCS is still reporting that they are struggling to find appropriate skills to take on trustee positions within some of the voluntary organisations, but they're increasing the amount of partnership work they're doing to try and address the challenges that are being faced. That includes an increase in outreach work. So they've been working with RF Waddington, Hill Holt Wood and a number of schools to try and increase the number of volunteers coming through the system. In terms of who volunteers, the two main age brackets are 19 to 29 and over 55s. So clearly there is more work to do to increase the number of volunteers in other age ranges. But that concludes the update in terms of the VCS activity.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. I think Ryan's going to take this one for us. Thank
Ryan?
you.
Thank you, Chairman. Members of the committee will recall that we've changed the suite of indicators that we're using now. So with your permission, I'll spend a little bit of time, more than I normally would, going through some of those indicators. The first few are pretty familiar to the committee members. Total fires, we've seen an increase on last year. That is exclusively down to arson-related fires. So there's been some 57 arson-related incidents. We continue to work with policing colleagues and our arson task group, keep offering fire sector intervention scheme interventions to those individuals who it's relevant for. to provide you some assurance, the 4-year trend does remain downward. So we are noticing a downward trend in total fires. The next indicator is fire fatalities. Sadly, we had 4 fire fatalities in Q1. Members of the committee will be aware that we don't set a target for this. Clearly, any loss of life is tragic, and therefore it's not a relevant indicator to set a measure for in terms of performance standards. Fire casualties remains steady right the way across the board. There's no impact on trend. We had 6 fire casualties, 5 of those in accidental dwelling fires in Q1. The trend remains static across a 4-year period. We then move into some new indicators. Safe and well visits reflects our statutory obligation to undertake community safety and fire reduction activity. The safe and well visit, as the committee will be aware, is the mainstay of our intervention for accidental and deliberate dwelling fires. We have a stretch target this year of 10,000 safe and well visits. We set the target at the beginning of this year for operational crews in particular to show a significant increase in the number of safe and well activities they were undertaking. We asked them to set their own target. They set a target of 10,000. I think it's fair to say that we're not going to achieve that, but we have seen a significant increase on the number of safe and well visits that we delivered last year, almost doubling the numbers that we achieved. Building Regs Consultations is the next measure that we're using. So we are a statutory consultee for new build for Building Regs Consultations. We have a requirement to respond within 15 days. We currently meet that on 94% of occasions. So that in real terms means that of the building consultations that we've seen, 158 we have achieved within the 15 days and 9 we have not met that target. That's largely down to the complexity of the building regulations applications that we're seeing. The risk-based inspection programme is the next measure. Members of the committee will be aware that we had a Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabers and Fire and Rescue Services report, which suggested that we weren't meeting our duties in terms of the risk-based inspection programme last year. We have now adequately resourced that department. Last year we did meet our target. This year we are on track to meet our target, and we provide a full breakdown of some of that activity as part of this measure. So we inspect in 2 main areas, high risk and medium risk. We undertake audits in those categories. The report shows the inspection frequency. So high risk sleeping risks, we undertake an inspection of those premises once every 12 months, right the way through to non-sleeping medium risks, where we go once every 4 years. The graphs there will show a breakdown of some of those audits that we've undertaken. We can provide some assurance that we are of the total. We need to undertake 169 audits per quarter in order to meet our target, and we're currently achieving 186. So we're well on track to undertake the full range of statutory audits there. Petroleum licensing is an area that we undertake on behalf of Lincolnshire County Council. We have 195 installations right the way across the county. We've trained a number of new inspectors this year, having lost a member of staff in April. We now have the right number of staff to undertake the audits, and we're now auditing petroleum new installations and auditing existing installations. And we have assurance that we're better undertake the 65 required by the end of this year. The last measure we have on the performance report is our attendance standard. We have an attendance standard to arrive on average to all dwelling fires within 11 minutes for the first fire engine. We're currently achieving that in 9 minutes and 18 seconds. So we are meeting our attendance standard. We also have another attendance standard that we will achieve. We'll arrive to all other incidents within an average of 15 minutes for the first fire engine, and we're currently achieving that in 11 minutes and 28 seconds. I appreciate that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. More than happy to take any questions at the end of this section.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To summarise road safety data in the report, People killed or seriously injured in Q1 is down from 132 to 107. Historically, Q1, if you look at the second graph on the report, tends to be down in Q1 across the last few years. Figures are still below 2019, which was 536 KSI, sorry, which was pre-COVID. They've risen slightly in 2021, which is now 448. It's still a downward trend in KSIs. I should note on the report, the comparison graphs, holistically and for child comparison, is 2017. I think in the previous committee, Steve Batchelor mentioned that we're still awaiting the Department of Transport data for the last quarter of 2021 so that we can update the comparisons between counties as well. But we still remain below the number that was in 2017. Child KSIs are also down, Q1 18 down to 7. 2021 KSI figures for children are slightly higher than in previous years. It was 37, 2019, 39 in 2021. That being said, in the last academic year, the Road Safety Partnership has been able to get back out to events and get back into schools and colleges. And we've been extremely busy in the last academic year. We delivered over 400 sessions in primary schools and secondary schools in the last academic year. We also went into colleges. We, I think, delivered to just over 20,000 students. Again, last academic year, which is slightly above what we were delivering in 2019 pre-COVID. So we are very much back out in schools and engaging with them. And I think, Mr. Chairman, that's it in terms of road safety overview.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Do we have any members wishing to speak? Councillor Sneath, followed by Councillor Brockway. Microphone.
Yeah, well, I've pressed it.
So don't touch.
It's okay.
Right, carry on.
Comments really. Just working through that, there's masses of stuff in there, obviously, all of which is very interesting and pertinent to most of us. But I don't think we can underestimate how most of us who live in the country, which after all is most of Lincolnshire, felt during the summer when the danger of fires on farms, my own included, you know, whether it was before it was cut, after it was cut, when it was stubble, it was a really frightening time. And I'm pleased that you're working closely with the NFU about that, because, you know, for all of us, it was a real issue and quite frightening. Secondly, about libraries, as an avid reader myself, I've always used our libraries massively, and I used to work on the mobile library actually. And I think I may be the reason that borrowings have dropped, because now I find I take less out, but I order a lot. I order new stuff, so that's maybe not so many, because everywhere you go nowadays there are secondhand books, and I think people are tending to buy secondhand books, read them, give them back to the charity shop or church or chapel or charity shop, whatever. So I think the library's still got a place, and I love libraries, and Pinchbeck Library and Hub is my second home. But I think we are using it differently, and also the time you can keep books out has been reduced, which, you know, if you've taken 8 home, it can take, particularly if you're a councillor, it can take you a little while to read 8 books. So I think that's quite important. But just the last point was, certainly Pinchbeck Hub, our usage and letting of rooms was massively helped with being used as a COVID vaccination centre. So that helped us immensely with our income. And I think there were several other hubs like that. So really, it was just comments, but all interesting stuff. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so fire-related comments and library-related comments. Does the presenters wish to come back on that at all?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for the comments. I mean, just to reiterate that assurance, the NFU are one of our really key partnerships. We've been working with them for many years, but particularly, obviously, as you highlighted, in regards to the events over the summer, and we've we brought in a really interesting initiative about having couplings that can be utilised on the farms, and been working very closely in regards to providing them to farms across the country, and actually the education and awareness programme to support the farming community in regards to how they can keep their own properties safe and around the farm safe, and how they can try and to reduce the risk of fire in the first place is really pivotal for this, because we recognise actually the loss of any of their industry while they're going through that is quite devastating, and so we do work very closely with them, and I think we're seeing some really positive outcomes from that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Will.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the comments. And I think it is a valid observation that there are a lot of venues out there now that are offering second-hand books, but libraries obviously are so much more than just places where people get books. But even with regards to reading through libraries, we did of course see an exponential growth of our e-reading engagement in the early months of the first lockdown back in 2020. And what I think is one of the real positives that we've seen in the last year or so is that as libraries have been fully open and people have been more used to going back out into the community, that hasn't disappeared back to its previous levels. So actually overall, although that grew exponentially when people couldn't physically get into libraries, when people could get back into libraries again, the e-reading didn't drop off. So I think, as with all things, there is a change in habits and how people engage with everything they do. COVID has accelerated some of this rather than necessarily forcing the change itself.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Brockway, followed by Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of short comments and a couple of short questions, if I may. To heritage first, I attended the big asylum event at the castle, and I just wanted to say in front of the committee, well done for all the efforts to support that, but I particularly wanted to raise praise for the staff at the castle. The standard of their work was phenomenal, and it really is worth noting. And people were in and out all over the place. They smiled, they helped, they were just top notch. So, I mean, well done. Thank you for that. So 2 questions for you now. Do we have any figures about the number of books taken out as opposed to the number of visits? Because as you mentioned, you take 8 books out. Is there any consistency in that? I don't need it this minute, but if it's a figure we could have, it'd be quite interesting. Thank you. You mentioned about a shortage of volunteers because of people going on to employment. Is there any link between the two, that those who actually, you didn't word it quite like that, but is there any link between the two, those who volunteer, does that give them better opportunity for employment?
Yeah, so there's some volunteering pathway work that is intended purely to help people get into employment. VCS receive referrals directly from the DWP, and the intention there is to give people work experience, gain confidence, and then progress into employment. We can try and get you some information on the success of that programme if that would be of benefit.
Oh, it's lovely. Thank you very much. And my last one, Chairman, if I may, it's a road safety partnership. I recently, I've been looking very much into this business of fuel efficiency. And the advice is that you take your speed down. So I actually did this on a 300-mile journey. I took my speed down to between 50 and 55, and it's probably one of the most dangerous things I've ever done on the road. In fact, at the Lincolnshire show, I went and discussed it with the Road Safety Partnership people there, because by me taking advice about fuel safety and taking my speed down, you'd think it would be safe, wouldn't you? Except that my doing that pushed absolutely everybody out into the second lane. Lorries had to overtake me, consequently pushing people out into the fast lane. And it's something I will never do again. And and the advice that the Road Safety Partnership gave me was to find a lorry and let them act as a pacemaker. If you want to keep your speed down, but don't go at a speed where you're pushing people out. So the judgment is much finer than save your fuel by taking your speed down. And I was wondering if there was any way of clarifying that message, because I do know that other people are starting to do what I did. I did it the once, never again. I could see how dangerous it was. But I just wanted to raise that because it really did alarm me. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, Nick, are you able to respond to that, please?
I was there at the Lincolnshire show when we had this conversation. Well, it was actually the training supervisor, Julian Rathbone, who was actually talking with you. I was just in the conversation, so I do remember the conversation. It's something I can take back to Julian and talk about in terms of what we can do in order to publish some guidance maybe on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. It's been so long since I've been here. I've almost forgotten how to use the mic. I just wanted to endorse what Will has said about the library hubs. When we finally got ours open in July, it pretty much coincided with the summer holidays starting, and we immediately had a story time circle. I did the first one. I did Let's Go on a Bear Hunt for the littlies, and we had a stream through the summer holidays of mums and small children coming in. And I know the staff were really pleased with the numbers that we got, particularly in the first 2 weeks. We've also had the local policing team now do a surgery from there, which is a positive. I've been in this morning and they're starting, there's a training agency, Legat, operate from there as well. They're going to be in there 4 days a week, apparently, going forward. They're doing a job club on a Monday. They're also doing stuff around advising people around interview techniques, CV preparation, all that kind of thing. And we're hoping in the winter as well that we can have a warm room from there, so that people who can't afford to heat their homes will be able to go in and at least keep warm somewhere nice, you know. And we're talking to the church as well. Hopefully we're hoping to give them cups of tea as well, but that's all in the planning. So whilst it's important that libraries provide books, the community hubs are so much more, and it's so valuable for the people that I represent. And just finally, I wanted to say thanks to Ryan and Mark, just thanks to the firefighters on behalf of the communities that I represent, because you're the ones that keep us safe, some of the people that keep us very safe, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, a couple of comments there. Will, would you like to come back on that one about the libraries?
I think mainly just to say thank you for acknowledging it. The warm hubs is going to be a very interesting one over this year as well. We've had a couple of the hubs that have already reached out to us to discuss this. All of our libraries and indeed our heritage sites, of course, provide very welcome venues for our communities to come into. We will be monitoring this closely to see whether or not that demand increases as a result over the winter period as well.
Okay, response there from Fire and Rescue to Councillor Lee's comments.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I mean, obviously much appreciated, and it's yeah, very grateful, and we'll pass that through to our crews and all of our departments who are working tirelessly through the communities, really. So it's just really Ryan and I's job, really, is just to help to facilitate that. But actually, just listening to your update in regards to the local libraries, and actually might be something that we can take back to say where we can be more actively involved in supporting our communities in that area as well. So we can start also being involved in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Downey, you've got a question for us.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for your report. It was very interesting. My first question is probably about the libraries. I'm very pleased to see that Boston, the library in Boston, has increased the number of people visiting it, and there is a lot of people using it now as well, so which is good. I would like just to if you can, probably provide me with the breakdown of the age, categories of people using the libraries. That will be interesting, because I think we should even push the young people to use libraries more often, for the books, which is good. That's one thing. The second thing, which is I would like to share with you, probably the fire brigade, which is I thank you a lot for your hard work. And I've seen what fires does, and I've been to Spain, south of Spain, and I tell you, the motorways were scary to look at the things all the side, in black and ashes, which is, I think it's a very frightening thing, which is, like I said, I thank you a lot for your hard work. What I would like just to mention, since we talk about public protection, if you may be aware of the river, the Witham River in Boston, and the green weeds, which goes on the top, it has killed a lot of fish stock. Fish are dead on the sides of the river. And we contacted the Environment Agency, and, probably to no avail, because the answers, they're not there. But since we're with, as I said, public protection, the smell in the town center is unbearable. It's quite bad smell. I don't know what we should do, or to whom we should address ourselves, to do something, because it happens every year. And I would like your advice, or probably if you can, just give us some information what we should do. I mean, we contacted the Environment Agency and still nothing, been happening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. responses, please. Firstly, Will, regarding the libraries.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to provide some additional information. Libraries do appeal to, across the whole of the ages, but obviously most of the time at our libraries are open. The younger people are in schools, and we mustn't forget, of course, that school libraries perform an incredibly important function as well. But the activities that are planned through the libraries are designed to appeal to everybody, but I'm happy to provide some additional information.
Fire and rescue response.
Thank you. Yeah, just so recognising the situation in Boston, particularly around the River Witham. In regards to fire and rescue, it's not really our statutory duty and our area of responsibility in regards to that, but we do have strong links with our partner agencies, particularly with Environment Agency and also Public Health. Which are the two areas that would be able to have the most influence in regards to be able to try to address that situation. So we're happy to pass on the comments, but my advice on this is actually it's Environmental Agency and Public Health would be the two main bodies to be able to address this issue.
Thank you very much. I totally agree with you. We'd like more power to go through that so we can do some changes. Thank you.
Councillor Danny, I don't think that comes under the remit of this committee either, but I'm fairly sure that the County Council's Flood and Water Management Scrutiny Committee would play a part in that. I'm more than willing to have a word with the Chairman, Councillor Reid, to see what can be done about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That would be appreciated if you can. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any further speakers? Oh, okay. I've got to hear myself. Page 34, one for you, Martin. On the table, the amount of people supported has increased significantly to 769 in Q4. Does that mean reported domestic abuse has increased also, or are we just getting better at the support? What's the correlation there?
Yeah, the numbers of victims has been consistent. So it's actually we're better at how we're referring through to domestic abuse now. So through to Eden Links, so our referral pathways, certainly from the police, last year increased by 88%. So that's where that increase has come. So we are supporting more victims. We're not getting more reports.
Okay, thank you. Fire and rescue related one. Ryan, you mentioned the 54 deliberate fires. Just what is going on there? An increase of 54. What spurred that on in a year? An increase, that amount of increase?
So as you'd expect, we have done some analysis in respect of this. We haven't found any link in terms of geography. We haven't found any link across the county or incident type. They are predominantly arson, but even with respect to the arson, it's not down to one incident type. So historically, where we've said that it's bin fires, it's grass fires, etc., there is no strong correlation across the county. We have, of course, had a very hot, dry summer, and we have had a number of deliberate grass fires, which has caused a spike. And I would also say that Q1 and 2 are always more busy in terms of fires than the rest of the year. So there's every chance that this will be, in the mix of numbers towards the end of the year, we might find it evens itself out.
I'm just thinking, is it a certain age group that might be involved in that? Do we need more education, main schools or anything like that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we haven't found a strong correlation in terms of age either. We do, as part of the Stay Safe scheme, we do go out into schools and talk particularly around deliberate fire setting. So it is something that we are continually talking to children and young people about. But as I say, it's not something we've seen strongly come out in the numbers.
Okay, thank you. And the breach of the 15-day response time, Ryan, could you just tell the committee a bit more about that? Who sets that 15-day response time? Is that local to Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue, or is that a national set response time?
Yeah, so it is a national set response time. It is best practice that we will respond within 15 days. We do that on the vast majority of occasions. There are, of course, some of the more complicated building consultations require a bit more time to respond. So this often we're in breach by a couple of days, and we will always have a response within the 15 days that outlines the fact it's going to take us a little bit more time to get a full response. So we do respond on every occasion, but those slightly more complicated ones, it does stretch that time out a little bit more.
Okay, thank you. And the target, I think it was 65 inspections by the end of March, equates to something like 10 a month between now and then. That you still feel that's achievable?
Yeah, that's perfectly achievable. So we now have 5 people trained to do petroleum licensing inspections. Previously, we only had 1 person doing it as their sole role. We've changed the way we deliver the petroleum licensing inspections this year to put a bit more capacity in the team to make sure that we haven't got a single point of failure. So that's involved training 5 members of staff up under a lead auditor. But yeah, we're more than happy that we've got that capacity.
Okay, thank you. Mark, Councillor Sneath mentioned about living in a rural area like many of us do and the dangers of that. You touched upon a coupling, I think developed in association with the NFU or whatever. I think I know what I mean, but I'm not what you mean. I'm not sure if the rest of the committee do. So could you just enlarge upon that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're recognising that on many farmlands, farmers have their own water supplies, often in large water bowsers that obviously they need to support their daily work. What we've done is we've developed a coupling that can enable when we turn up that we can directly connect into those water supplies that are already on site. What that does, that cuts down an awful lot of time and resources that we often have to do to trying to find alternative water supplies. That means that we can respond to their farmlands as quickly as possibly can, and we can start doing that initial firefighting as soon as we turn up on site. So it's been really successful. We've had a review of that, and we've already had several incidents in farm areas where we've seen how this quick response and being able to access their own water supplies has been quite invaluable in regards to knocking down the fire at its earliest opportunity.
So does that, for instance, fit on the farmers' water bowsers and tankers and any of the containers they may have?
Absolutely. So it's a dedicated coupling that actually which is there on standby, because obviously the farmers have their own different size of couplings and attachments for their day-to-day use. If in the event of a fire, they can connect that coupling to it straight away. So when we do turn up, our fire appliance, our fire engine can literally just connect into that water supply straight away, and we can have access to that water supply as soon as we turn up.
Okay, thank you. Nick, one for you there. The Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership wants to see a 20% reduction over 10 years from the 2010 to 2012 annual average. I couldn't see from the figures how that is looking. Are you on target for this 20% reduction?
As I kind of mentioned in the summary, there's definitely a trend that's going downwards. Whether or not that's 20%, I'd have to check that with Steve for you and get back to you on that figure. I can see that it's like I said, I can see that it's dropping, but if we go another 4 or 5 years back, I'm not sure whether or not we are actually on target or not. So I'll find that out for you.
Okay, I think I could only see from the report figures went back to 2017 or whatever. Yeah. Okay, and just it would seem that Linkshire's record of KSI casualties is still not really one to be proud of, if I'll be honest. And I feel there's still a lot more work to be done. But what can be done? What more can we do to get the figures down?
I think from my point of view as an education supervisor, I think it's really important in terms of the priorities that we've got in our strategy, pedestrians and young drivers, 17 to 24-year-olds. It's important that we reach out to those and educate those students, those new drivers. We get into colleges to do that and universities to do that, as well as schools. I think a lot of the data still suggests that we're looking at pedestrian casualties and in-vehicle casualties are quite high in number in terms of the data. So it's how we instill a knowledge and of road safety awareness at a younger age, I think, as they come through. Hence, we focus very heavily on primary school and secondary school, how to behave in the car and also how to behave on the roads. But ultimately, I think it's very much about educating and raising awareness. And also, when we go into secondary schools, we talk a lot about distractions and things that can cause accidents that you don't necessarily. It's behaviours, it's behaviour management and change. But I think ultimately, from my point of view, it's about educating and supporting the best we can in terms of that.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Have we any further questions, Vice Chairman? No. So thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. And thank you to all your presenters for everything you've said there. I'm going to move that we receive the report and that the committee records its satisfaction with the performance achieved in Q1. And lastly, that our comments, as recorded, are taken under consideration by relevant officers and portfolio holders. Can members please raise their hand if you agree? I think that's everyone. Thank you. That is agreed. We'll now move on to agenda item 7, which is the Lincolnshire Registration Celebratory Service Annual Report. This item is on pages 71 to 74 of the agenda pack and updates the committee on the service delivered by the Registration and Celebratory Service. Our actions for today is that the committee is invited to review the contents of the report and comment on the level of service achieved. The report will be presented by James Chappell, who is Head of Registration and Coroner Services. So without further ado, over to you, James.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to touch on 3 key areas of the report and then take any questions. So the first one is that of service delivery. So the registration service has faced another busy and challenging year. The lifting of the pandemic restrictions during 2021 and the removal of the COVID legislation in March 2022 has seen the service return to pre-pandemic delivery, with all registration events conducted face-to-face. The demand for birth and death appointments, along with ceremonies, continues to remain high, and death registrations continue to be prioritised, and the service is currently planning for another challenging winter. Birth registrations have returned to normal, and there are no backlogs, and events are being registered in a timely fashion. The pandemic did impact ceremonies heavily. The delays saw couples move their ceremonies into 2022 and beyond. The service is now taking bookings for summer 25 and has already undertaken over 1,500 ceremonies since April of this year. Second item I would like to touch on is that of a new IT system within the registration. So during 2022, the service has been working with Stopford Information Systems to introduce a new IT system within registration. The system is twofold, one for the registrars, but also one for the public. It changes the way that the residents can access registration services. The system allows for residents to book their birth, death or notice of marriage or civil partnership appointments online via the council's website, on a computer, a tablet or a mobile device 24/7. The ability to book these appointment types online has seen excellent take-up. So the system first went live for births and notices on the 15th of August and for deaths on the 25th of August this year. At the time of writing this report, 79% of all birth appointments were being booked online, 74% of notices appointments being booked online, and 36% of death appointments are being booked online. A number of other functions within the system will be introduced later in the year, and that will include online pre-payment of services, online booking of ceremonies, and an online ceremony planner. The final point that I'd like to touch on is future legislative change, which is going to impact the registration service moving forward. So following the national removal of the Coronavirus Act, which saw the withdrawal of telephone death registrations, the General Register Office, the governing body for civil registration, has announced that in collaboration with DCMS, that a bill will be passed in 2023, which will permanently allow customers the option to undertake birth or death registrations via telephone or face-to-face. In July of this year, you may have seen in national press that the Law Commission has published its findings following its review of marriage. The proposal in there are quite radical and would see the largest change to the way that marriages were conducted since they started. One of the main areas of these is to move away from premise to person, which would see the expansion of outdoor ceremonies to be anywhere within England and Wales. I'm going to pause there. Thank you, Chairman, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from anyone? Okay, it would seem to me that deaths are decreasing, I should say, births are increasing, and getting married is becoming really popular for some reason.
That is correct, yeah.
But if I turn to the one I'm more familiar with, that's death registration. In particular, that was welcome during COVID, that we was able to register deaths over the telephone, and I think it's probably disappointing that that actually stopped. it enabled families to register in the comfort of their own home, surrounded by family, etc. And I did notice that that could be introduced by the government bill if passed next year. Is it looking likely, from what you know, that that could come back?
Yes, from the interaction with the General Register Office, they are hopeful that this will be passed around springtime of 23, obviously subject to anything within in Parliament, and then that would then enable people to do their birth and their deaths online or face to face, sorry, over the telephone or face to face.
Okay, okay, that's good. Anyone wish to speak? No, you're getting away quite lightly then, James, by the looks of it. Okay, so thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. So thank you very much, James. I'm going to move that we endorse the report and we request our feedback comments from the debate to be taken under consideration. Can members raise your hand if you agree? Okay, Councillor Rowe, are you agreeing to that? Oh, you're, sorry, executive support. Yeah, sorry, get carried away. Yeah. So everyone agrees. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 8, Trading Standards Impacts and Outcomes Framework. This item is on pages 75 to 86 of the agenda pack and provides a review of the delivery of trading standards services in Lincolnshire for the final year 2021-2022. The actions of this committee is that we're invited to consider and comment on the contents of the report and the delivery of trading standards services for the financial year 2021-2022. The report will be presented by Emma Milligan, Trading Standards Operational Delivery Manager. So over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Chairman. I have got some slides that Kiara's kindly putting on the screen for us, but Mark's prepared this report for you, the detailed report regarding our outcomes and review and delivery of the Trading Standards Service for the financial year of 2021-2022. You'll have obviously read the detailed report, and I'm just going to give you a summary and then look to the future about what could be affecting trading standards in the future and the latest emerging issues. So as you all know, the Trading Standards Service plays a key role in enhancing the economy for legitimate businesses and safeguards the financial interests of our residents. Our service is particularly focused on protecting the vulnerable who are at the greatest risk from organised criminals and unscrupulous businesses. We seek to achieve a level playing field for business and empower consumers. So you'll see from some of the data that Mark's provided, trading standards had a wide breadth and depth of legislation that we have to enforce and around powers and duties. So that's 124 acts of parliament with over 1,000 regulations. And the service sits at 33 full-time equivalent staff, and we have 9 officers that are studying for professional qualifications. I want to just comment on the officers' commitment and dedication, but also the senior experienced staff that are supporting those officers to achieve their qualifications. We've had officers receive distinctions, and our latest review from the national verifier has put Lincolnshire students at a very high level, but also some of those students are now acting as apprentice ambassadors, and some of their work is being showcased nationally for other students to support other students. So that's a great accolade to us. Just looking at some of the business premises that we've inspected, we've got a high number of 526. Some of these were done remotely via the internet due to the Food Standards Agency guidance during the COVID pandemic. But we also visited some high-risk safety premises, explosives, and then food and feed. As I say, some of these revisits bringing those businesses back into compliance and supporting those businesses. I know that you've already had a full report on some of our animal health matters previously with Mark and Barbara, the lead officer. But just wanted to again highlight that avian flu, we had 15 incidents in the county last year, which really did have an impact on our emergency response, losing 210 officer days dealing with that. On another animal health matter, we're also supporting the National Animal Health and Plant Team, the APHA, get my letters out, and it's to tackle the top offenders around bovine tuberculosis testing. And we've seen a reduction, and part of that is awareness raising and campaigning with farmers regarding the rules. So if we just ask the next slide, please. I know Martin's already touched on our latest figures, but here's some of our figures from last year regarding illicit cigarettes and counterfeit items that were seized. Again, in terms of some of our unsafe and non-compliant items that were seized from traders, we've taken a lot of action around unsafe cosmetics, fireworks, furniture and electrical items, and some of these investigations are still ongoing, although you can see some of the figures around some of our prosecutions. There has been a delay in some of our cases are ready at court, but however, with the pandemic, the courts are slightly slower with some bits that are going through, so we are still waiting on a number of our prosecutions to go through. We've been undertaking a number of food samples, and that was no different through the pandemic. Again, we wanted to make sure that we were supporting business, but also protecting consumers. So looking at takeaway products that people may be buying more of, looking at allergens, ensuring that the products that were supplied were described correctly, and as I say, preventing food fraud and taking any action where we needed to there. Sorry, next slide. For those of you that don't know, all of our calls regarding trading standards matters from consumers come in via the Citizens Advice line. And last year we received just under 7,000 referrals, and then a number of referrals from the police and our partner agencies. The Citizens Advice team provide a advice service for consumers, but then those referrals are sent through to trading standards. Our duty officer will assess them, and then if there is a need, then they will come through and be looked at by our enforcement teams. We have a prominent social media presence, supported really heavily by Chris, who's sat in the back of the room, so thank you to Chris. We're able to get a lot of our consumer empowerment messages out via Facebook and Twitter, and also let the general public know what we're up to and where we are, and hopefully hit the latest trends. And so that's something that we will continue to engage with to get some of our messaging out there and some of the work that we're doing. We provide a presence to business and support business. We had a high number of requests for advice last year due to the change in regulations for COVID. And we also offer a bespoke service in partnership with Business Lincolnshire, where we have a dedicated trading standards officer who provides advice to businesses. I think last time when we presented, we brought the fudge and looked at some of the other businesses that officer has supported. And we also have 14 primary authorities, which we've given a substantial amount of advice to. Again, they're companies that are based in Lincolnshire, such as Lincolnshire Co-op, Bakkavor, some really big players, and we support them nationally to make sure that they have all the information they need to remain sort of compliant with different legislations. So it's just the final slide now, just to touch on, as I said, the emerging issues for trading standards. There's lots of the usual day-to-day stuff that you would expect, but some of our emerging issues will be looking at the cost of living. High inflation puts households and businesses under immense strain, and the most vulnerable and disadvantaged are affected. So trading standards helps to protect residents from harm by ensuring honest, fairness and safety across the marketplaces. So we're looking at this and working with other partner agencies, but our feel is around food safety and making sure that the food that people are receiving is safe, and working with the supply chains to make sure that consumers are not put at a disadvantage. Regarding weights and measures, providing confidence to buyers that they're getting what they pay for, so especially testing around the accuracy of petrol pumps. And we know that in Lincolnshire, lots of people have oil delivered to their property rather than gas supply, so looking at bulk fuel there. There's also concern around animal health and welfare, and working around with farmers to ensure that the additional pressures put on our rural communities with the impact of fuel inflation, and working with those as well. We're also concerned about the rise in scams to consumers, these too good offers, things that are too good to be true. And making sure that, you know, if you're going to buy a product, if you're thinking of buying something a little bit cheaper, that those products are still safe and comply with those important safety regulations that we've talked about. and checking about that illegal supply, you know, that people think actually I still want to smoke and then I go into the illegal market. So it's about raising that awareness that, you know, illicit and illegal goods aren't better. Avian flu, I think last year was a bit of a shock to us with our 15 cases. We know that it's still a concern for the county. We've got avian flu currently in our neighbouring authorities in Norfolk. So it's sort of a watch this space with the response that we will provide to that. Martin's already stolen my thunder a little bit with vapes, but talking about there's a concern growing nationally for vapes, and it was highlighted in a recent press release from the Chartered Trade and Standards Institute, especially around underage sales vaping. We're working to support businesses that want to comply. It is quite complicated. Well, it isn't complicated, but there's quite a lot of products out on the market that isn't legal, and it's about supporting those businesses with the correct information. And Martin's highlighted that some of the work that we've done on that and had some really positive feedback from businesses. But it's also about us removing the counterfeit and unsafe items off there that have you know, far too much nicotine within that product, and you know, these products are used as a stop smoking aid, and to make sure that the right products are out there, but also providing education and informing young people. So we do a large piece of work in schools supporting that, and that's where we are getting some of that intelligence from. Something relatively new for trading standards, although it has been around for a while, the construction products. There's a new set of regulations out following Grenfell, and we'll be working with the Office of Product Safety and some of our partners, looking at market surveillance and enforcement on non-compliance. We've got a new set of powers for that. We do feel there will be some challenges. It's very complicated and complex set of legislation, so we're looking to receive some full training on the regulations. And there's also the new building safety bill. I don't know if that was what Ryan was alluding to, but so we will be working with our partners in the local authority, building control, and the health and safety executive there. Illegal landings is something that's been highlighted as a national issue, and there's a new dedicated team within animal health. So it's here to protect us from diseases such as rabies. So we're getting more referrals of undocumented and unvaccinated animals. And in addition, pets from the Ukraine, we're working with the messaging and supporting the sponsors, so they're aware of the rules as well. And then really it's just the normal everyday trading standards day job and what we'll be doing there. So that's just some of the emerging issues for trading standards. So happy to take any questions that you might have. So thank you.
Okay, Vice Chairman. Councillor Sneed.
Thank you. I'm from the south of the county, and we're suffering or struggling with a great shortage of vets in our area. And having seen all that you know you're concerned with animal health, avian flu, and bovine tuberculosis, I'm just wondering how is this impacting you at all, or are your officers fully trained in many veterinarian matters?
No, our officers aren't trained as vets. So we work really closely with the animal health and I can't remember the APHA, and they have qualified vets that we will use and work with during our duties. So we're experts in the legislation and they're experts in you know, the veterinary field, and we work with them and supporting us on what we're doing. So yeah.
I see. Oh, that's better then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There is actually a shortage sometimes there. So we do see where you're coming from. We do, yeah, struggle sometimes to get vets. So yeah, appreciate your comment.
Thank you. Councillor Brockway.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a fascinating report. It's very, very interesting. Thank you for all the work you're doing. I'm sorry to be a pain, but I do have a concern on paragraphs 3.3 and 3.9, pages 78 and 79. You successfully got a prosecution for people selling cigarettes to underage people, but in order to achieve that, you had to send in an underage volunteer. Now, the problem with that is I wonder how much risk that exposes the underage volunteer to, because the person who's selling the cigarettes is going to see them, especially if the people executed the warrants straight afterwards. So they would be able to identify that child as the informant. May not be a child, maybe a 17-year-old, I don't know. But when you go on to paragraph 3.9, it kind of adds to my concern, because on the third line, it says that the sale of illegal cigarettes have been directly linked to organised crime in our area. So if we're sending a youngster in, I mean, how often do we do this? And how can we be sure that the people who are subsequently arrested or prosecuted are not going to go back and have a go at that child? So thank you.
I don't want to sort of give our tactics away in terms of how we do underage sales because of the forum that we're in, but I would like to just reassure you that it is thoroughly risk assessed, and those we work with Lincolnshire Police and those officers are with us when we undertake test purchasing. So there is a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes. As I say, tactically, I wouldn't want to sort of discuss it because it is a covert operation. But those children are protected and looked after, as I say, by trained science officers and with parental consent as well. So with an understanding of what they'll be going into. And as I say, if the premise wasn't risk assessed or deemed as safe, we wouldn't be using those tactics to put the children in, and we would use another form of another operational tool. Okay.
Thank you. No further comments. Emma, on page 78, 3.2, it reads the combined penalties totalled £484. Is that right, or was that £484 per offence? Or I just don't seem quite right there to me.
It wasn't a huge fine that the gentleman received, so I think that the information is correct in the report, although he was found guilty of the offences.
Yeah, and similarly, I know it's out of your control, but 3.3 and 3.4, it says fines and prosecution costs do not, I mean, they don't seem much of a deterrent there. What you got amounts of £100 costs and 106. They don't seem much of a deterrent to me. And I know they're not set by yourselves, but can you just tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, I suppose it would be individual circumstances of who we're prosecuting and what circumstances that person puts to the court. We do work with magistrates and etc. to explain some of our offences and the seriousness around them. So it is, as I say, is a guilty plea, well, a guilty response for us. The person was found guilty, but it's up to the courts to decide, as I say, those penalties that provide to that person, depending on their personal circumstances. I don't know if there's anything more that you could add, but
yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, I think it's an important point, and we use the courts as a way of tackling illegal traders, but we also try and use other tactics as well. You know, the court sentence is based on their income and whether there's an earned guilty plea, and that includes, you know, the possibility of prison sentences. But that's why whenever we can, we do try and use other tactics like closing the store to impact them on their income streams, and we will use proceeds of crime to try and take off any income stream from them, as well as the court process. So, you know, we're trying to use all the tools that we have, and court is one of those. But we are at the whim of the court and the court rules.
Yeah. And also on page 81, 4.7, it mentions 73 premises were non-compliant. Can you just explain the procedure for the committee, please? I mean, clearly, if they're not compliant, you then give advice, and then you follow on with another inspection. Presumably, they're given time to rectify matters, and you inspect again. Can you just tell us the process, please?
so it would depend on the non-compliance of, you know, we'd use our enforcement policy. So if it's a basic non-compliance, then we may just follow that in writing and ask the business to produce some information to us to show that they're now complying. It might be around some labelling. If a more serious non-compliance, then we would obviously be going back into that premise to either seize goods or put a restriction on those goods, which then would probably mean that we will be going back into there during our investigation to ensure compliance and to check that there's no other further non-compliances. It will really depend upon whether it's an animal welfare issue or whether it's a product safety issue, or, as we've already talked about, the illegal tobacco. But yeah, that will be the reason for those.
So one of those could be quite protracted, quite labour intensive. and
Yeah,
quite
some
involving.
of them will be, and the
Yeah.
more serious offences. So yeah, but where we've so some of the cases that we've had, not to sort of disclose some of the work that we're working on at the moment, but I know that officers have had to go back into that premise weekly to make certain checks that improvement notices. So we're working with other agencies and other professional experts. So we've had to go back in to ensure things are being put right, because it's the safety of the sort of general public. And to make sure those things are right, or whether those goods have been suspended so they can't be sold anymore. So yeah, that can be very labour intensive, but also when we're trying to support a business, because we do go into businesses where, you know, they want to get it right, but they need our support to get it right. So that will still be quite a lot of work for the officers to provide that legal information, and that's why we have the work through with Business Lincolnshire and through the primary authorities to support business. We are here to support business as well as deal with those that don't want to comply.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chairman, have we any further speakers? No. Okay, so thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. Thank you, Emma, for your presentation. I'm now going to move that the committee receives and endorses the report as an accurate snapshot of the achievements of trading standards for the 2021-2022 year in supporting our local economy and tackling criminal activity while supporting our businesses and promoting health and well-being. I also request that our comments as captured are taken under consideration by officers and relevant executive portfolio holders. Can you please raise your hand if you agree? Okay, that is everyone. Thank you. That is agreed. So agenda item 9. Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. This is on pages 87 to 92 of the agenda pack. The report was presented by Chiara. Our actions are the committee is invited to review the work programme and highlight any additional scrutiny activity which could be included for consideration in the work programme. So over to you, Chiara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chiara Catiano here, Designated Scrutiny Officer for this committee. This item enables the committee to consider and comment on the content of its own work programme for the coming year and to ensure that scrutiny activity is always focused where it can be of greatest benefit. So the work programme is extended through pages 87 to 92 of your agenda pack. And in our next meeting, which is on the 8th of November, we are due to receive 3 reports from the fire service, one being on the Links Fire and Rescue, progress on response to inspection outcomes from Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, the Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue Attendance at Flooding Incidents, an annual report on performance, the Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue Service proposed changes of duty arrangements, which is a follow-up report. And we are also due to receive an update on Lincolnshire's response to the Ukraine humanitarian crisis, which is going to come from Sam Neal, Assistant Director for Prevention and Early Intervention. There's a few more items listed under the list of items to be programmed, and I'm working closely with officers in terms of scheduling them in our work programme for the year 2023. And this concludes my update to you, Mr. Chairman, and to the members of this committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chairman, are there any wish to speak? Mark.
Sorry, excuse me. Got a bit of a cold this morning, so forgive me on this. It's just probably a comment or a caution in regards to our first item about the progress for the HMI inspection. As the scrutiny is on the 8th of November. We're still waiting confirmation when HMI are coming back into the service to give us a revisit, and it'll be sometime in October. If that's going to be at the end of October or that's delayed, that we may not have sufficient time to get the report in time. So it's probably just a bit of an error caution. We may have to ask if that could be put on through to December's scrutiny meeting, if that's the case, just so we can get the full update exactly where we are from HMI.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay with that?
Happy to roll the item forward. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Any members wish to speak? Okay. So thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. And thank you, Chiara, for your report. I'm going to move that we note the report and approve the existing work programme as detailed in pages 87 to 92 with that possible amendment. Can I ask you to raise your hand if you agree? That's all agreed. Thank you. We now sit as the Crime and Disorder Scrutiny Committee on agenda item 10. And the next two items on today's agenda will be discharging our Crime and Disorder Scrutiny Committee function in line with Section 19 of the Police and Criminal Justice Act 2006. So the Stay Safe, item 10 is the Stay Safe Partnership Annual Update. This report is on pages 93 to 102, and it provides an update on the Stay Safe Partnership project, its achievements to date and future plans. The actions for this committee is that we're invited to consider the content of this report and offer comment on the continued delivery of the Stay Safe Partnership project in the proposed format. The report will be presented by Claire Newborn, Community Safety Manager. Catherine Smith, Stay Safe Coordinator, is also in attendance to take questions. Is Claire here?
Unfortunately, Claire's not well, so unfortunately, you've been left with me.
Okay. Halfway through that, I thought I've not seen Claire here. So over to you then, Catherine.
Okay, so if you aren't aware of what the Stay Safe Partnership was commissioned for, we're preventative education across Lincolnshire schools with a focus originally around secondary school aged children. So providing those evidence preventative messages that were required. We're multi-agency and we work across different partners as well as voluntary organisations too. Obviously during COVID, there was quite an issue in regards to the schools being closed, but we worked very hard and the team was very innovative in creating online packages so that we could offer a blended learning approach for the students that we work with. So overall, our bookings increased by 39.6% in 2020 and 2021, despite still being hit by COVID regulations and school closures, and a further 26.4% in 2021 and 2022. Our Stay Safe days are our multi-agency days that bring partners from Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue, Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership, Lincolnshire County Council, Lincolnshire Domestic Abuse Partnership. We are with you. I'm going to forget one and then I'll get in trouble for forgetting them. Oh yeah, the police. Oh my gosh, can't forget the police on Lincolnshire Police. So we provide different messages which are detailed within our report as well. So there's two tiers of messages. There's a year 7 and year 8 day, which is our 11 to 13-year-olds. And then there's also our year 9s to 11s, which is our kind of 13 up to 17-year-olds. So those messages become kind of increased in their detail as they get older and they do remain age appropriate. The days remain very impactful with our students. In 2021 and 2022, we spoke to 19,141 secondary school students, and we also spoke to 10,265 primary school students. So we are a small team, but we have quite a big reach across our county. On the day of the Stay Safe Days, we talk about very topics that can be quite difficult to speak about. So we talk about domestic abuse, we speak about county lines and knife crime, about drug awareness, and lots of different things that many of our young people may have been impacted on themselves. So we take a lot of disclosures on those days from those young people. And last year we took 117 disclosures from students. And if we hadn't have been out delivering these days and they hadn't had that intervention, then they would have remained hidden victims. And following 3 months on from the days, we go back and ask our teachers the impact of what the Stay Safe days have had on their schools and their students. And they do report back that actually the main thing that they see is increased disclosures from their students coming forward and bringing through issues that they are facing themselves, and also improved behaviour within the school. So that really shows that actually those days are having an immediate impact with those students. There is a need for prevention to be delivered to an earlier age range to ensure that there is more impact. Prevention should be offered with children who are forming their key values and beliefs, and that has to happen at a younger age. And we are seeing a lot from our schools that they're asking for those requests earlier for that prevention messages for those younger children in primary school. Currently, we only deliver to year 6 on online safety, and from January 2022, because we had some investment from the Lincolnshire Domestic Abuse Partnership, we were able to start a year 2 workshop around friendships and dealing with our emotions. So that early beginning around that healthy relationship, detailing what kind of qualities would you look for in a good friend, what should we be looking for, and actually those emotions, how do we deal with them in an appropriate way. So that has been delivered to just over 3,000 students since January. Regarding the online safety, we would like to extend our curriculum to cover year 2 up to year 5 workshops, as that is the element that we are missing. So we currently deliver to year 6 through to college age. So we would like to deliver those messages earlier. If you can see from page 5, the evidence shows that children and young people live their lives in a very blended fashion, with the online world being a key factor. And by the age of 11, 59% of children have social media accounts. There's many positives to these young people being able to be online, but equally there are also many dangers, and we'd like to extend our curriculum to equip children with the knowledge to make those safer choices. To fully implement these across the county, we would require further investment in the amount of officers that we have to be able to deliver that appropriately. Our approach to online safety is a threefold approach. So we not only speak to students, we also speak to parents and to professionals as well. And we began doing parent question and answer events over Teams. Originally, we had scheduled these during 2019, 2020 to be face-to-face, but obviously with COVID, we were unable to do that. So we moved this to an online response, and it was very well attended. We had 225 parents attend that Q&A and ask the questions that they wanted to in regards to trying to keep their children and young people in their homes safe. And we plan to do this biannually now, with the next one taking place on the 7th of December. Equally, we had questions from professionals from a range of different organisations, from police to early help workers to teachers, asking for that more up-to-date regular chance to offer question and answers around our online safety issues and what they're seeing in schools. So we've started to run professional training too, and that question and answer event, and that was attended by 67 children's home workers, early help workers, teachers and police officers. And again, we are planning to run those on a biannual occasion after feedback we received from them, with the next one happening on the 14th of December. And we're also aware that our healthy relationship work would benefit from earlier consistent messaging. We obviously have mentioned that we had the investment from the Lincolnshire Domestic Abuse Partnership, which enabled us to have that worker to deliver year 2 workshops as well as our secondary workshops. And we did report about that we'd submitted a children affected by domestic abuse bid to the Home Office, which unfortunately we were unsuccessful with. So we are continuing to explore different options of partnership work and further funding, so that we can try and tackle those identified gaps on a smaller basis than what was originally planned, should we have got the bid. Our universal offer of prevention is well taken up and received by schools, children and young people services, and we continue to make links with various partner agencies to improve the county's prevention offer. To improve services further, we would like to provide a more reactive and targeted work, but this would require more analytical investment, so that we could use crime data and intelligence alongside the data that we get from schools and professionals who are on the ground working with the children and young people. We very much strive to reach all children and young people, including those who are more hidden to service and vulnerable, like elective home educated students. So we're very much finding new partnerships. So along with offering out our blended learning opportunities that they can access from home themselves, we're also partnering up with agencies such as the YMCA, who bring them together into a space to go and deliver face-to-face workshops to them also. We are actively in all of our pupil referral units, and we deliver our days in a very different way to what we would in mainstream schools, in order to most impact those students. So we deconstruct those days and we offer it as standalone workshops across the course of the academic year. We also are active in special schools too. So we would work very closely with the organisers around the students' need, around their abilities. And again, we would adapt our workshops to suit them, so that they also get the messages that they require. Our hope for the future is that we receive further investment and we continue to grow and impact, so that we're able to make our communities a safer place to live by enabling our students and our young people to make safer choices. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Sneath.
Thank you. Thank you. Interesting, all good stuff. So pleased to hear that this is being offered. You say it's offered to every secondary school in Lincolnshire. Does that include independent schools?
Yeah, we do offer to independent schools as well. So obviously our targets are based on the mainstream academics and secondary schools, but we do have quite a few independents who also access those days. So it's open to everybody. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Brockway.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much for this interesting report. I was interested in the way the concerns of the children are divided, and mental health is way up there, much higher than everything else. But the thing is, that will be linked to things like harassment, bullying. That's going to be linked to the mental health issues. One thing that I notice is absent from their list of concerns, and that is the pressure of their schoolwork. They do talk about careers, but there doesn't seem to be anything here indicating that they are worried about academic achievement. Now, as a past teacher, certainly that was a considerable worry for a lot of youngsters, especially in the 14 to 16 age group, because that's when we pressure them enormously to get their exams and, you know, as a gateway to their next courses and their next careers. And I'm really surprised that there's nothing here for that. And I wonder why. Thank you ever so much.
So I think it's very much the context of the day that we're speaking to them around. So we're talking to them about those kind of topics that are affecting them outside of their school. So I think because obviously their minds are in that frame, they're kind of talking about those issues that affect them on a more fuller life picture. But I think the age group that you're talking about, very much they do speak around the careers, the life skills, the financial bit, those kind of, I want to learn how to be an adult. But they've kind of broken it down into those topics. No one really kind of mentioned that kind of, I'm worried about my exams or how I'm going to do in school. It's more they'll break it down into mental health or anxiety or careers and money management.
Okay, thank you. No one else? Catherine, on page 95, the table shows an upward trend in bookings delivered. Presumably that upward trend looks set to continue from what you're saying. Is that the case? Do you see it keep continuing?
So the trend has obviously gone up, that we've got more and more bookings.
Yeah, sure.
This year it is looking like we are going to get more again, but our capacity did increase obviously within 2021 to 2022. We're Lincolnshire Domestic Abuse Partnership added an extra staff member, which obviously allowed us to increase some of our delivery. We would hope that we would receive more investment in order to be able to deliver more within our primary schools. But at the moment we are fully booked with our Stay Safe days, and it's our primary schools are starting to get booked up again as well. So our team will deliver to the full capacity that they can.
Okay, on the top of page 97, I may well have missed this one, but on top of page 97, it mentions the Home Office bid outcome is expected on the 2nd of September. 2nd of September's gone. How's that?
Yeah, so we weren't successful in our bid
So it
this
wasn't
time round.
successful.
No, so we are going to look at talking to partners and how we can deliver and bridging those gaps that were identified in a smaller fashion, because obviously that was quite a significant investment should we have been successful. So we will look at how we can do bits and pieces to try and target those areas.
Okay, thank you. No one else wish to speak? No, okay. So thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. Thank you, Catherine, for your presentation. I'm going to move that the committee receives the report and that we are satisfied with the achievements of the Stay Safe Partnership project to date. I also request that our comments as captured are taken into consideration in future design and delivery of actions. Can members please raise your hand if you agree? All agreed. Thank you. Next agenda item is agenda item 11, which is serious violence in Lincolnshire, a partnership response. This item is on pages 103 to 108 of the agenda pack and provides the committee with an opportunity to consider serious violence in Lincolnshire and the partnership response to the expected new statutory duty for county councils and other public bodies to be brought in by the Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Act 2022. The report will be presented by Martin Parker, the Assistant Director for Public Protection. Our actions are that this committee is invited to review and comment on the contents of the report, and also review and comment on the proposal to respond to the expected statutory duty by addressing it through an expanded Safer Linkshear Partnership framework. Before we move on with the report, I would like to make a note that Martin will also inform us of an update to the report since its publication within this agenda pack, and welcome some clarification and elaboration on what the change or addition is about before we consider the report. So over to you, Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wonder whether you would indulge me in just repeating what you said in relation to Sarah Barry leaving Lincolnshire County Council now that she is in the chamber. Before I do that report.
I'm sure it's no coincidence that she was out the chamber when it came to chairman's announcements. I'm sure that was purely a fluke, but we did say, and it's on the record, that this committee wishes to thank you, Sarah, for your work and input and everything you've done over the years, and it's been a pleasure working with you. Yeah. And Martin also added to that. So I want to say a bit more, Martin.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a great pleasure, and I will miss Lincolnshire County Council. I've worked for two authorities, Lincolnshire and Northamptonshire, and it's been a great honour. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been good pleasure working with you. Thank you.
Yes, and just some personal thanks from myself as Head of Public Protection, Sarah, for all your work and help, certainly for me over the last few months. It's coming in April. So on to the serious violence duty. I'll highlight to members where the relevant changes or additions that come in, but just an overview. So the new duty, as Mr. Chairman said, is legislated under the Police Crime Sentence and Court Act of 2022, and it's about bringing together bodies to target intervention and prevention work around serious violence. We are expecting some statutory guidance to be published later this year around the duty, and the duty is due to come in force January 2023. Those bodies that...
Martin, as you just paused, I'm aware that Councillor Corey got a hand up at some point. I'm not... Can you come in there, Councillor?
Thank you, and apologies, Martin, for interrupting your flow, but I did want to add my thanks to Sarah Barry. I'm not the current portfolio holder, but we did work together when I was the executive support member up until May of last year. So I wanted to extend my thanks and congratulations on a very long and successful career. And good luck and enjoy what you're doing next. Thank you. Thank you. And apologies, Martin.
Apologies for the interruption. Right, carry on.
It's absolutely fine. It's not a problem. So those bodies that the duty requires to take some formal action are police, probation, youth offending teams, fire and rescue, the health service, district councils, county councils. They're the named bodies, but also they are to consult also with education, prisons, youth custody authorities in the area in preparation for the strategy that's pulled together. The serious violence duty has set out some specific areas of concern, including homicide, violence against the person, which may both include knife crime and gun crime, and areas of criminal activity where serious violence as a threat is inherent, such as the county lines and drug dealing that we have experienced in the county. However, what the duty does allow us to do is be also flexible around our definition with this serious violence to ensure that we do incorporate evidence-based element of what is serious violence within the county and focus on those areas related to that serious violence. And this may include and not limited to items such as domestic abuse, alcohol-related violence, sexual abuse, modern slavery or gender violence. So effectively the duty, although it's given us some steer on some areas where it might push us to look at, it is also given us a duty to look at what our basic needs are within Lincolnshire in terms of our own areas of serious violence. So where we are currently within Lincolnshire today is the Police and Crime Commissioner for Lincolnshire has set a priority to establish a serious violence reduction programme and is willing to invest £3 million commitment within that programme of work. The PCC did commission Public Health with LCC to complete a needs assessment for Lincolnshire, which is now complete, and the headlines are contained within the report that you see before you today. The next steps within that is to develop a working strategy based on our local intelligence and evidence that works. And once we have that strategy in place, then we can then work out a delivery plan. There are still some aspects that are unknown around the serious violence, and the most significant one is around funding. We know the commitment that the PCC has put in this, but we don't know yet from central government what funding looks like. So the future funding is unclear. It is anticipated that there will be central funding that will come into Lincolnshire that the PCCs will be in a position to bid for, but that will obviously be a collaborative bid through different agencies. The governance of this strategy and development of the delivery plan will sit under, or looks to sit under, the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership with the creation of a new serious violence core priority group. And this is the area of development that has changed post the element of publication of the paper. So following the publication of the scrutiny papers in respect of our response and management of the serious violence duty, there has been additional collaborative arrangements made that Executive Councillor Patricia Bradwell will lead in partnership with the PCC and will co-chair the Serious Violence Core Priority Group with the Deputy PCC, Phil Clark. This enables us to have greater scrutiny both within an LCC and a PCC over the delivery of the serious violence duty. So really the key message that I want to say to Scrutiny is that we are in a good place in our partnership arrangements. We are ahead of the national timeframe in terms of our expectations of presenting a needs assessment on Lincolnshire's needs around serious violence, and our plans to have a local strategy and delivery plan in place prior to the duty coming into effect in January 2023. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Martin. Any speakers? No. Just on 106, page 106, Martin, about those the key findings. I note serious violent offences up 13% over the previous 12-month period. Just tell us a bit more, please, if you could. For instance, our cases up, or just getting better at reporting them?
I think it's both.
Both.
I think you know, also the data is coming in a low level where crime really reduced during serious violence, really reduced during COVID. So our nighttime economy crime, where you would expect to see fights, serious disorder, drop because those weren't open. So we're assessing ourselves on a not an equal footing in terms of the previous year to this year. So again, that's another contribution to why we see a 13% increase.
Okay, thank you. No further questions? You've got away light, Martin. So thank you for your questions and comments. That now concludes the discussion of this item. Thank you very much. And the proposal is that I move that we receive and endorse the report and the recommendations made to the relevant executive portfolio holder on the proposed way forward in responding to expected statutory duties. Can I ask that you raise your hand if you agree? All agreed? Thank you. Item 12 is the consideration of exempt information in relation to item 13. So in accordance with section 100 in brackets A in brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, agenda item 13 has not been circulated to the press and public on the grounds that it is considered to contain exempt information as defined in the paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. As amended, the press and public may now be excluded from the meeting for consideration of this item of business. So we'll have a 5 minute, 4 or 5 minute break. Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry. So proposed by Vice Chairman, need a seconder. Councillor Sneath, all agreed? Thank you. Yeah, we'll have a short break.